Currently, we are on a journey to discover facts found in the Bible about sickness and healing. And today's focus is on the first healing found in the Bible. Do you know when the first healing took place in the Bible is? You may guess that it's in the Gospels, but that's not the case. It's found in the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis. The first recorded healing took place by the prayer of a prophet. You may have heard of him. His name was Abraham. Ironically, this was also the first bodily affliction found in the Bible from wrongdoing. Abraham's wrongdoing. Let's pick it up in Genesis chapter 20, verses 1 through 18, and it'll make more sense. It says this, starting in verse 1. Abraham moved south to the Negev and lived for a while between Kadesh and Shur. And then he moved on to Gerar, while living there as a foreigner. Abraham introduced his wife Sarah by saying, "She is my sister." So King Abimelech of Gerar sent for Sarah and had her brought to him at his palace. But that night, God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him, "You are a dead man, for that woman that you have taken is already married." But Abimelech had not slept with her yet, and so he said, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Didn't Abraham tell me she is my sister? And she herself said, 'He is my brother'? I acted in complete innocence. My hands are clean." Now, this isn't the first time we saw Abraham deceive someone about Sarah. She was so beautiful that everyone took note of her immediately. Abraham technically didn't lie because she was his half-sister, but he deceived them because they were also married. Abraham wanted to hide their marriage from nobility, assuming that they would kill him to get to her because of her beauty. And now God is telling Abimelech that he is now a dead man for something that he didn't even know about. Ouch. And now he's pleading his case with God. Continuing on in verse 6, it says this. In the dream, God responded, "Yes, I know that you're innocent, and that's why I kept you from sinning against me, and why I did not let you touch her. Now return the woman to her husband, and he will pray for you. For he, Abraham, is a prophet, and you will live. But if you do not return her to him, you can be sure that you and all of your people will die." King Abimelech's and his people's outcome, they hang in the balance of the king's response to God in this dream. God called Abraham a prophet, even amongst this deceit. And he tells Abimelech to return Sarah and to have Abraham pray for him, and he will live. And if not, he and his whole innocent nation will die. Ouch. Continuing on in verse 8, Abimelech got up early the next morning and quickly called all of his servants together. And when he told them what had happened, his men were terrified. And then Abimelech called for Abraham. He says, What have you done to us?" he demanded. "What crime have I committed that deserves treatment like this, making me and my kingdom guilty of this great sin? No one should ever do what you have done. Whatever possessed you to do such a thing?" And Abraham replied, "I thought that this is a godless place, and they will want my wife and will kill me to get to her. And she really is my sister, for we both have the same father, but different mothers, and I married her. And when God called me to leave my father's home and to travel from place to place, I told her, 'Do me a favor, wherever we go, tell the people that I am your brother.' And then Abimelech took some of his sheep and goats and cattle and male and female servants, and he presented them to Abraham. He also returned his wife Sarah to him. And then Abimelech said, 'Look over my land and look over my land and choose any place where you would like to live.' And he said to Sarah, 'Look, I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver in the presence of all these witnesses. And this is to compensate you for any wrong that I may have done to you. And this will settle any claim against me, and your reputation is cleared.' And then finally, in verse 17, it says this, 'Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his female servants so that they could have children. For the Lord had caused all of the women to be infertile because of what had happened with Abraham's wife, Sarah.'" Interesting that infertility was the issue here. Abraham and Sarah were struggling with the very same problem. They were waiting for the child of promise through Sarah and had already had Ishmael through Hagar. And now all of a sudden, Abraham is praying for Abimelech and others to be healed of infertility. And what's even more interesting is that in the very next chapter, Abraham and Sarah have Isaac right after this event. So the question must be asked, how did Abraham operate in healing? Because Christ hadn't come yet. And to answer this question, we must go back to Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4. And we discussed this scripture set in a previous lesson, so I won't go back through it again. But Isaiah is prophesying about Christ's atonement. And I want to highlight the first 3 words. Surely God has. Notice the past tense. Surely God has. Now, the book of Isaiah was written 1,000 years before Christ and the atonement. Yet it still has a past tense to it. It's not surely God will. It's surely God has. Now, if Isaiah were to say these words today, it would make sense because God has. Christ and the atonement are in the past. It's already taken place. But Isaiah says, surely God has, 1,000 years before this moment. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the atonement was the plan from the very beginning. It used to be that farmers used credit from their local stores for seed and for other necessary items to plant and farm in early spring. The farmers usually didn't have the money until harvest time from their crops. And so there was a relationship of trust among the locals, and the farmers would gladly pay their debts as the money from the crops would arrive. So there was an exchange based on trust in what all parties knew would eventually come. What took place with this healing in Genesis 20 and others found in the Old Testament was that the atonement was on the credit of surely God has until the payment arrived. Something to remember. If Satan could have understood the depth of those first 3 words, surely God has, he wouldn't have put Christ on the cross. We'll see you next lesson.